Hello, everyone, and welcome. Today, we're going to dive into the life of a man who changed the way we live, work, and connect with the world. A rebel, a dreamer, a visionary, Steve Jobs. But let me ask you something right from the start. Do you think one person can truly change the world? Let me know your thoughts in the comments because this story might just convince you that the answer is yes. Early life. Steve Jobs was born on February 24, 1955 in San Francisco, California. His biological parents were two young university students, Joanne Schiebel and Abdul Fattah Jandali, who felt they couldn't raise him at that time. So Steve was adopted by Paul and Clara Jobs, a modest couple living in Mountain View. Now imagine this, the man who would one day create Apple and revolutionize entire industries, started life in a simple household with no big luxuries. Do you think being adopted shaped who Steve became? Share what you think down below. From an early age, Steve showed curiosity and a rebellious streak. He wasn't the kind of kid who followed rules blindly. He loved tinkering, experimenting, and asking tough questions. He once said that he always wanted to think differently. And trust me, that mindset would define his life, youth, and education. Jobs grew up in what would later become Silicon Valley. As a teenager, he developed a love for electronics, thanks to his father, who taught him how to work with his hands, taking apart and rebuilding things. In high school, Steve met Steve Wozniak, Woz, a genius in electronics. That friendship would become legendary. Jobs went on to college, but like many visionaries, he didn't last long. He enrolled at Reed College in Portland, Oregon, but after just one semester, he dropped out. Still, he hung around, sitting in on classes that interested him, like calligraphy. Funny enough, that calligraphy class would later inspire the elegant typography and design that made the Macintosh so unique. Have you ever taken a class you thought was useless at the time, but years later it turned out to be valuable? That was Jobs' experience with calligraphy, founding Apple. In 1976, Jobs and Wozniak, with a little help from Ronald Wayne, founded Apple in the Jobs family garage. They started small, building computers by hand. Their first product, the Apple I, sold for $666. Yes, you heard that right! But the real breakthrough came with the Apple II, a massive success that helped launch the personal computer revolution. Then came the Macintosh in 1984, introduced with one of the most iconic ads in history, the 1984 Super Bowl commercial. The Mac promised to make computing accessible, personal, and creative. But let me ask you this. Can you imagine life today without personal computers, smartphones, or tablets? Hard to picture, right? Conflict and departure from Apple. Jobs was brilliant, but also demanding, sometimes extremely difficult to work with. His perfectionism and intensity clashed with colleagues and Apple's board of directors. In 1985, shockingly, Steve was forced out of his own company. Imagine that, being fired from the very company you created. How would you react? Would you give up or would you fight back? Next in Pixar. Instead of giving up, Jobs launched a new company, Next. Though Next computers were not a big commercial success, their technology was groundbreaking. In fact, Next software later became the foundation for macOS and iOS. At the same time, Jobs bought a small graphics company from George Lucas. That company? Pixar. Under his leadership, Pixar created Toy Story in 1995, the first fully computer-animated feature film, and the rest is history. Pixar became a powerhouse, delivering hits like Finding Nemo, The Incredibles, and Up. So think about it. Without Jobs, not only would Apple be different, but the entire history of animated films might look completely different too. Return to Apple. In 1997, Apple was in serious trouble, on the verge of bankruptcy. And then, the unthinkable happened. Steve Jobs returned. What followed was one of the greatest comebacks in business history. Jobs streamlined Apple's product line and introduced a series of iconic products, the iMac, iPod, iPhone, and iPad. Each one wasn't just a gadget, it was a revolution. Jobs once said, "People don't know what they want until you show it to them." And he proved it time after time. If you're enjoying this story and want to keep discovering the lives of extraordinary people, Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the next episode. The iPhone Revolution. In 2007, Apple introduced the iPhone. Think about it. Before the iPhone, phones were clunky with tiny screens and physical keyboards. Jobs envisioned a sleek device with a touchscreen, combining a phone, an iPod, and an internet communicator. It completely transformed the world. Today, smartphones are essential in our daily lives, but it all started with that keynote in 2007. Do you remember the first time you held an iPhone or a smartphone? Share your memory in the comments. I'd love to read it. Personal struggles. But behind the genius and the fame, Jobs faced personal challenges. He could be harsh with employees, sometimes even cruel. He struggled with relationships and had a complicated family life. In 2003, Jobs was diagnosed with a rare form of pancreatic cancer. He resisted conventional treatment for a time, hoping alternative methods would work. Eventually, he underwent surgery, but the disease continued to progress. Legacy. On October 5, 2011, Steve Jobs passed away at the age of 56. The world mourned the loss of a visionary. Apple's website displayed nothing but his picture. Tributes poured in from around the globe. Jobs left behind a legacy that extends far beyond Apple products. He revolutionized music with iTunes and the iPod, phones with the iPhone, animation with Pixar, and computing with the Mac. He taught us that design matters, that simplicity is powerful, and that innovation requires courage. But perhaps his greatest lesson is this: never settle. Always push forward. As he said in his famous Stanford commencement speech, "Stay hungry, stay foolish." So what do you think? Was Steve Jobs a genius, a tyrant, or maybe both? Let me know in the comments. Your perspective matters. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into his life, please subscribe to the channel, give this video a like, share it with friends, and drop your thoughts below. All of that really helps the channel grow. Catch you next time as we reveal another life behind the character.